Well, we're lucky to have with us today Adam Bass. Adam is the co-author of the recently published Boise River Water Trail Guidebook. And there's quite a history to this guidebook, as I understand. It used to just be a bunch of pieces of paper stapled together. Why don't you give us a little history to kick us off today, Adam?
Yeah, well, it all started out with Tom Chellstrom, or Chell. He really canoed the river quite a bit back in the 90s and found that there was no guide for the river. And so he took a bunch of USGS quadrangle maps back in 1996 and turned them into one giant PDF that allowed for people to understand uh, how to access and what is along the river. And so he took all those quadrangle maps and Xeroxed them and turned them into a guidebook that was in PDF form and was available at REI and IRS. And then continued to update that throughout the years until 2005, where it was updated to be an Excel spreadsheet and a Google Earth tour as well. And so that was with Gary O'Grim to turn it into an Excel and Google Earth tour. And so that was another major update to the guidebook. And it continued to explain all the different features along the river and how to access it safely and some general descriptions to flows and such things like that. Then in 2015, the Boise River Enhancement Network posted it to their website and made it available to all of its members and anyone interested in knowing more about the Boise River um, as far as access goes and recreation goes. Now, in 2020 and 2021, we've done another major update to it that is to turn it into a uh, waterproof guidebook. And this will allow the people to take it out on the river, and you can see it here. And so it can get wet, and it will show you the access points based off of a USGS aerial image from 2019 is when these were taken, and they were accessed through Earth Explorer via the USGS website. Thank you.
Well, thanks, Adam. That's a great history. What an amazing evolution. Well, rivers are hazardous. What are the kinds of hazards that floaters would expect to find on the Boise River, and how can they be prepared to have a good, safe trip?
No, that's a great question. That's something we always want to keep in mind whenever we're getting on rivers, is to understand that paddling on rivers is never completely safe. And so all we can do is reduce the risk that we take on these rivers, and that risk in general for the Boise River is associated to tree strainers and snags. These can form sieves where they can hold rafts or even people up against them as the water is pushing through them. So that is the biggest concern. The next biggest concern would be to be aware that there are fishermen and anglers along the river, and to watch for any fishing line and lures hanging from the trees that can become hung up on people too. Um, so to plan for these is to know what sections you are doing, where your uh, put in and take out are going to be located at, and then to look at these sections, maybe from Google Earth or even from the Water Trail Guidebook, of what features might be along that might cause issues. Uh, we also want to be aware of diversion dams and the potential need to portage those, or whether or not they are paddleable. There are some diversion dams that you must portage, and there are some that you can get through. And so knowing your gear on top of your plan is really good to have an idea of how it works and whether or not it is fitting correctly as far as your PFD goes, a helmet goes, whether or not it's functioning correctly. If your paddle is broken and it's taking on water, you're going to want to get a new paddle. Don't try to make things work. Uh, Make sure your gear is up to snuff for what you're planning on doing. Um, and so on top of all of this, to stay safe on the river, uh, we want to practice good skills if things go wrong, and that is to know when your plan is not uh, being that line isn't being towed anymore, where you're off your plan, and communicate with your group and your members of how to get back to what the plan was. And that is something that needs to be consistently done, even when you are on plan, is to keep communication with your group. Don't leave anybody behind, and make sure everybody is in the same understanding uh, before committing to something.
Do people have to be aware of the flow in the Boise River when they're out there boating the river? You know, does it stay the same all the time? And then, you know, can you boat the whole river like in a tube or something, or do you need to be in a hard shell kayak? What's your advice on that?
Well, this book is this guidebook is meant for craft other than tubes and inner tubes. It's really meant for canoes, kayaks, rafts, or stand-up paddle boards. Um, those tube and inner tubes should be kept to the main Boise River float from Barber Park down to Ann Morrison. As far as safety on the river, because the city of Boise clears that section out, but it doesn't clear out the other sections. And so this guidebook is intended for uh, floaters that are not in inner tubes. And it is based off of a flow at around 1500 CFS. And so these descriptions, if the flows get any higher, would not be relevant. And so it's definitely something to keep in mind, that your flow will change the river and the features along it. And and so that is something to always check. The USGS gauge at Glenwood is a good resource for understanding what the flow is and what it is doing. Luckily, it is below 3 dams, and so it is regulated fairly well and doesn't fluctuate large amounts from day to day, unless there's some rainfall, or in the spring though there might be some larger fluctuations. But in the summertime, it can be pretty consistent from day to day. Um, and the flows are pretty unique along the Boise River because of all the irrigation going on along it. In the summertime, the Boise River will continue to lose water as it gets closer to the Snake River. And so those sections downstream of Caldwell aren't as paddleable, because it doesn't have as much water in it, because of all the different diversions for irrigation being pulling the water off of the river. Then in the fall, it has the reverse effect, where there's not, in the fall and winter, that is, there's a reverse effect where there's not much water in the upper stretch, but then down in the lower stretches there is more water, and there's more recreation available down there. It's just, you want to be aware that there might be some hunters out there, and some fishermen as well. And so always keep a mind and eye out for those folks.
Well, there's 54 pages in this guidebook, Adam. That's quite a lot of stuff. So when the want-to-be floaters and explorers open the guidebook, what kind of information are they going to find in the guidebook?
Well, they'll find plenty of information about access points to get on the many sections along the Boise River. It is about 70 miles long, and so there are a lot of different sections to go paddle. And having access points and knowing how to get to them is really key to having a good experience along the river, or starting off with a good experience. Uh, and then also to reduce our impact on the river as well. Um, so this guidebook provides those access points in these light green icons. And then there's other information along this too, like the Boise Whitewater Park and how to navigate through it, or what to expect going through it. There's also information about Bren projects, and it lists out the bridges along the river. That way, we know where we're at and know what to expect. And so, looking at the Ann Morrison to Glenwood stretch, a great place to put in for this stretch is down below the diversion dam at Ann Morrison Park, and then floating down through all the bridges that lead into and out of the city of Boise, uh, then down through the Whitewater Park, and going to down into Garden City. And this is where you can see that there's information about the river as it leaves the predominantly Boise area and starts getting into an area that has less channelizations to it. We have descriptions of geomorphology along the river, and this section describes how the channels start to become more prominent here, these side channels along this area of the Boise River, and it's becoming less channelized, something to where it was more similar to in the past. Um, and then further, we also have descriptions of birds and and fish wildlife, as well as plant life along in this guidebook. Um, Going on a little bit further from Glenwood, um, we'll go down, and so taking out at Glenwood, I'm sorry, I'm moving all along here. The takeout for the Glenwood stretch is down at Westmoreland Park, and that is on the right and indicated here. And then you can see here there's a description of how to access Westmoreland Park in the sidebar here. And again, this is waterproof, and so these can be taken on the river, and you can look out for prominent features, monuments like bridges to know where you're at and how far left you have to go with these mile points. So we indicated this whole mile here in blue, and then these are tenth of a mile markers as you go along the river. And so going to Middleton to Wittenberger Park, oh, excuse me, it's on the wrong page. There is access point at Middleton Road, and this takes you through an area that also has side channels, as you can see here. Here's a description of some plant life, the Russian olive that has become invasive in the area, and we try to describe these as best we can in the guidebook as well. There's some other access points that are kind of not as used as other ones, and so you could kind of make note of that as you experience them, uh, and, uh, and and try to use them accordingly. But going down through this Middleton to Wittenberger Park, you can see that there hasn't been much development along it, and it is really pretty. Mason Creek comes in from this area here, right before you go down through the canyon in Canyon County, along the river, and that's why Canyon County got its name. There's a canyon and gorge right through this area here. Uh, there's a geomorphology description about it here. Uh, and Mason Creek runs right along this plateau that's been formed by the river.
Adam, this is an incredible resource. I can't imagine that you wrote all of it yourself, but who wrote this? Where did this information come from?
Oh, that's a great question. No, I did not write all this myself. You know, it takes a community and a team to get something going like this. There were quite a few contributors, probably about like a dozen plus total contributors to this work. And so I wouldn't want to be described as the author of this work, but I'd like to be described as a contributor to it. And as you can see here, we have professional photographers who contributed to this, and Ken Miracle and Craig Roberts. Um, we also have fish biologists that have contributed, geomorphologists, uh, plant experts, and bird experts who wrote the descriptions to these wonderful pictures. Um, it, it really was neat to get everyone to collaborate on this and to organize it all, um, and just to see all the different working parts and all the knowledge that is available through the Boise River Enhancement Network. Uh, there's a lot of brilliant professionals and also willing volunteers that really want to go out and provide a good benefit to the river and help out with it. Um, and so I, I think that it took a big group, and have to say thanks to the group that contributed to it, and then also to our sponsors who helped fund it uh, and supported us in that way.
Who are the sponsors of this awesome guidebook? And maybe you could also share a little bit about the Boise River Enhancement Network.
Oh yeah, that'd be great. Definitely want to give major props to our sponsors, like Kennedy Wilson, who allowed us to get this project underway. They provided initial funding for us to get a graphic designer on board. Casual Creative did a great job in collaborating with us and working with us as we made changes and updates to the guidebook through this overall evolution and update. Um, on top of that, Forsgren Associates was the basis for getting these aerial images into a format that we could print. And so their software programs were used to develop these sheets, and the sheets in a way that we can add information to them. And then AIR provided support in being able to print these guidebooks. And so we want to give a huge shout out to them as well. Without them, we wouldn't have been able to have the funding source for printing them. And then as far as the Boise River Enhancement Network goes, it is a group of professionals and volunteers that want to benefit and provide a sustainable ecosystem for the Boise River from Lucky Peak Dam down to the confluence with the Snake River. It's about a 70-mile corridor, and there is a lot of opportunity for maintaining its integrity rather than having the developments that are going to be going along it or around it or in the valley, uh, causing harmful impacts that will degrade its integrity over the long term. And so it's really all about making sure we take the Boise River into account when improving our lives and our situations, and to take the wildlife along it into account.
Now, it's wonderful to see the community support for this resource, Adam. So how can people find out more about the Boise River Enhancement Network? And of course, the question on everybody's tip of their tongue is, where can they go to purchase this incredible and beautiful guidebook?
Well, you can purchase this at Idaho River Sports, REI, or AIR. Those are current carriers of it, and we look forward to making more copies in the future, and especially next year before the floating season begins. Um, and as far as the Boise River Enhancement Network and where to access information about it, you can go to our website, and there's also an Instagram page and Facebook page that you can subscribe to and get updates about different opportunities to go volunteer for, or to even become a more a founder, a member or a founder of the Boise River Enhancement Network. Um, and so thank you, and thank you, Liz, and yeah.
That's great. We've been talking with Adam Bass. Adam is one of the contributors to the Boise River Water Trail Guidebook published by the Boise River Enhancement Network. As Adam said, it's available for purchase at Idaho River Sports, at REI, and at AIR. And if you want more information about how to keep the Boise River healthy river, you can go to www.boiseriverinhancement.org. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.